Good morning or good afternoon, ladies, and welcome to this week's installment of Torah with a Takeaway. We are now in our second installment on our classes on Megillas Esther, and we had amazing miracles. People are under the wrong impression, thinking that Megillas Esther is just one big miracle at the end, that of Haman hanging, but that's not true at all. What we're going to find is there's a myriad of miracles constantly to show that Hashem behind the scenes runs the show, and every step of the way was a miracle. For example, just to review for 2 seconds, 1 minute, what we accomplished last week. We talked about Nebuchadnezzar, this wicked person trying to hide his treasure, all those world famous treasures from his family. Instead, they were unearthed to Koresh, who happened to do a good deed in his lifetime. He allowed the Jews to start building the base of Mikdash. Koresh ended up with the treasures. And then finally, in our Megillah last week, we find him, Achashverosh displayed those treasures every day of the party. Second thing, there was a huge miracle, was the throne, the whole idea of the throne, and he had to move it to Shushan to accommodate his fabulous throne of King Solomon, and because of that, that was because Hashem wanted Mordechai to be on the scene for a great deal of the Megillah, and we needed Mordechai on the scene. Vashti ended up making her own party in the Beis Hamalchus. That was like first faux pas, and then she said this whole thing how she doesn't want to have to do with the king at all. She said he was like a stable boy, so he's burning angry inside. Unbelievably, he kills Vashti, his claim to the throne. And you'd think any major decision made by lawmakers in any day or time should be made with sober heads, and nobody there was sober. Why didn't they wait till the party ended? It's unbelievable that he got rid of Vashti, his main claim to fame. We're going to even see today that he does miss Vashti, and he feels he did something wrong. He's not sure he did the right thing. Unbelievably put her to death. And that Haman, first day on the job, speaks up and everyone listens to him. And that he suggests not only should Vashti be killed, but he also recommends that there should be a new rule that the king should have omnipotence at all times. Unbelievable rule, omnipotence. And this is going to be Haman's downfall, and all the other ministers. Why would any minister approve of that deal, where if the king is omnipotence in every area of his life, that could be that they're totally now without any power, any say whatsoever. And it was a foolish move, but again, everyone was in a drunken stupor for 187 days. So what do you expect of them? Unbelievable. A whole first parak of of um, of Megillas Esther. Now let's enter the second paragraph, the second parak rather. But we've got to have a few little explanations before we begin. Number one, Reb Revda mentions that he thinks teachers, when they teach Megillas Esther, they talk about little kids. Let's say they start out, the little child is introduced to the fact there's a bad man named Haman and there's good men named Mordechai, and that's true. So there's no doubting it. But that's not supposed to be, as a Jew, our focus. It's part of it, but it's important to introduce to children and to ourselves that when Hashem wants it, when we are not behaving properly, Hashem sends world famous figures against us. They are just a vehicle. They're just an instrument used by Hashem to show us that we've been doing something very wrong, and that we have to improve our ways. This was the Holocaust that Victor Miller, I said, posthumously wrote. He wanted his book he wrote posthumously to be published, how he felt that the Holocaust was not inconsistent with anything else that we ever learned in halacha. That is, that whenever the Jews sin, Hashem puts against them some very powerful people, and we have to learn our lesson. The Holocaust was already on the way down. He didn't want it published in his lifetime, because during the Holocaust, even after the Holocaust, rather, that generation, a lot of people would have taken affront to it. We do believe 100% with complete faith that there were a lot of holy people lost in the Holocaust, but it was not unlike any other period in Jewish history where somebody who decides to, the people were falling down already. There was Zionism and socialism and all kinds of isms. Yiddishism, all kinds of things going on, and the Yiddishkeit was going down. There needed to be some major changes. Here too, we can't fail to understand that when we behave and we act properly and we do tshuva, Hashem saves us. And that's really, it doesn't matter who's president or prime minister, it's up to our tshuva. And that's relevant for all times and all ages. And that's the one takeaway we have to have from the Megillah, how our actions are very, very important and not those of monarchs or leaders or world leaders, or they're just vehicles and they're just, moving us along. But this week's parak, basically, if we had to give it a title, we would call it, we're going to be doing Beis and Gimel this week. And this is, first of all, pasuk from Tehillim, Atzas Hashem Hisakum. That when Hashem wants something to happen, it's going to happen. We're going to see, despite all odds, very strange things are happening. And it also shows us, this parak, the greatness of the small person, the little person, who we take for granted and we don't often appreciate. There was very often, there was a famous story about the Stipler Gaon. He was once sitting in a cab, and a cab driver in Israel was complaining to him and telling him, Rebbe, he says, I don't know what to do. I get up early in the morning to daven, and I help my wife every morning, and I try to learn as much as I can. And I drive this cab, and it takes out all my strength by the time I come home and help my wife again with the children in the evening. And then I go to learn. The moment the shiur begins, I fall asleep. What's going to begin? What's going to be with my Torah study? So the Stipler told him, you should know, in Shemayim, you're a general, because you gave your last ounce of strength to serve Hashem. So we have to know that too, that there's no such thing as Hashem as a small person. There's no small Jews living in the world. And especially Purim, when it's going to be a time where we have to pour out our hearts in prayer. Today of Tefillah, it's like Yom Kippurim. It's as holy as Yom Kippur. Some people, the Rizal says it's holier than Yom Kippur. Some people say it's better to daven all the tefillos, and even if you don't daven Ma'ariv, for example, you should try to daven Ma'ariv on Purim, because this is a day where tefillah is answered. And a lot of times, one of the main obstacles that we all have in our davening is we keep thinking, Hashem, why should you listen to me? I'm just a little person. But we're going to see that the little people change the face of the Megillah. This is a story I tell every year when I get to this parak. I saw this in the Ated years ago, and it really made an impression on me. The story was like this. In the time when Rav Steinman was the Gadol Hador in Klal Yisrael, before Corona, before COVID, there was a girl, an American seminary girl, was spending her year in seminary in Yerushalayim. And she went with a friend shopping and in Geula and Mea Sharim. They're all over the place. And then what's it called? All of a sudden, she started feeling unwell, and she developed Bell's palsy. And she thought it over. And she says to her friend, I think this happened to me because I disparaged a gadol. Who did you disparage? They were looking at pictures. I remember there used to be a person in Kikar Shabbos that sold pictures in a kiosk. I loved going there. He had such unusual pictures of Gedolim, like beautiful, beautiful. He's no longer there. I don't know where he is, but I hope he's gesund wherever he is. Provided a beautiful service. Anyways, so she said it was a picture of Baruch Ber. I believe Baruch Ber was an Ish Kadosh Ad Ma'od. Holy, holy man. They said when he would give a shiur, after the class he gave on Torah, he put so much of himself into it, so much of his head into understanding every aspect of Talmud, of Gemara, that after the shiur was over, his clothes were soaking wet from sweat, from the effort that he put into his learning. And day and night, he was really a holy, holy human being. So many stories about Baruch Ber, whatever, tremendous, tremendous person. Anyways, so what I'm imagining, she said, disparaging about Baruch Ber, maybe his payas were askew, because he was a kind of person that was so into his learning, probably didn't notice if his payas are behind his ears, on top of his ears, how they are, where they are. He was so into Torah, Torah, Torah. That's it. Anyway, she thinks she said something. She was introspective, and she told her father that please come help me. So her father ran to Israel. You can imagine, 17, 18-year-old girl. Father runs to Israel. He goes into Rav Steinman. Besides, I'm sure they tried every medical avenue they could try as well, but they ran into Rav Steinman, and they told him this is what happened to my daughter, and she thinks this is why it happened. It was almost immediate. Rav Steinman said, then you have to go to the grave. You have to go to the caver of Rav Baruch Ber, and with a minion. I think he said with a minion. I'm not positive. I don't remember anymore. He says you have to go and you have to ask mechila. You have to ask forgiveness from the tzaddik. He's such a huge tzaddik you said something about. So the father called up people, askanim, people that are very active with these type of things, and he told them that my daughter, has this problem. Please help me find the cave of a Baruch Bear. So everybody starts running and jumping and going all over the place looking. They got back to him and they told him we don't know where Baruch Bear is buried. They said that he was one of the three pillars of the Jewish world before World War II. People said because these three great Rabbanim died, that's what brought on World War II. If they would have stayed alive, World War II never would have happened in their lifetimes. One of them was Rav Shimon Shkop, Rav Baruch Ber, and the Chavetz Chaim. Those were the three. And Rav Chaim Weiser, I think, had passed away. Also, Rav Chaim Weiser was also. So maybe, I'm sorry, maybe it was Rav Chaim Weiser because Chavetz Chaim had passed away before that. Anyways, yeah, those three were the biggest gedolim of the time. Anyways, so what happened was that that they passed away before World War II. World War II happened. A lot of things got lost because of World War II. So the father goes back to Rav Steinman and tells him, Rabbi, I don't know what to do. Like, they can't find the caver. Rav Steinman says, I'm sorry, you won't be forgiven until you find the caver of Baruch Ber and ask Mechila. So he calls back the Askarim, the people that are activists, and he told them, please, I beg of you, please find his grave. So they found three men in their late 80s that were at the funeral of Baruch Ber. And, they put, I guess, notices that people should come forward. They all testified that he's buried in Vilna. So they had that clue. That's number one, that he's buried in Vilna. He wanted to be buried in Vilna because his father, he was an only child. He was so attuned to his parents. They said he was the most amazing son ever. Such kibbud of aim this man had was absolutely incredible. Like he would try to bring his father his favorite drink every day. And they said that one time when his father was dying, Baruch Ber was at his bedside day and night, but he had to give shiur. So some boys came to me and said, Rebbe, we know you have to give shiur just to go to sleep a few hours. Go to sleep a few hours. We will stay at the bedside the whole time. So he acquiesced and he did it. And then soon after, his father passed away, and he was beside himself, thinking he hadn't properly fulfilled the mitzvah of kibbud of aim. He couldn't believe himself that he wasn't, doing it properly. He had to be calmed down. The Chavetz Chaim said there's tshuva, and tshuva wipes away all your sin, and you have to believe it, and different things like that. He was just such fear of heaven, this man. The very great biography I've written on him, called by the original title, Rav Baruch Ber. Look it up. It's a great, inspiring biography. Any case, so they told him he's buried in Vilna, and apparently when World War II broke out, it was just breaking out at the right after he passed away, but things were already crazy. He said his last words to students were, "Please bury me near my father. I want to be near my father because I owe so much to everything my father did for me." So he was granted that request. The only problem was apparently the Vilna cemetery was packed. There were luminaries buried there, very, very famous people. So what they decided to do, people testified that he was the only grave in the entire cemetery that was buried perpendicular to the others, because he wanted to be accommodated to his father. I guess they relaxed the rule in this case because of kibbud av v'eim. Maybe it overrode the other idea. There's a certain way we have to be buried. If anybody ever finds that out, please let me know. Maybe I'll try to check at the same time. We're supposed to be buried in facing a certain direction. So it's usually not common in a cemetery to find someone buried perpendicular. So that was already one clue. Secondly, they used kind of infrared rays or some kind of, I don't know, X-rays or ultrasound or some kind of rays to find where the grave was located. Plus, they also found at the last minute the map of the Vilna cemetery. Incredible. They found the map of the Vilna cemetery. And they were able, because of this girl, to find the caver of a Baruch Ber. Unbelievable. And the following year, at the headstone of a Baruch Ber, there was a Hakamas Matseva. They put up a headstone. This just happened like 12 years ago or something. In the whole Kamenetz Yeshiva from Yerushalayim, all the administration, the Hanhala, all the Rabbanim and great Rosh Yeshivas, because he was Kamenetz in Lithuania. They all came and were able to put up the headstone, daven at the Hakamas Matsev of Baruch Bear because of a seminary girl who introspected. So a little person cannot be pushed away. So we're going to find out how the little people play in this week's Perek, and then we're going to get to Perek Gimel hopefully as well. Okay, now in Perek Base, Achar Advarim Ha'ela, after all these things happened, that Vashti was put to death and everything else we spoke about, Kisho Hamas Hamelech Achashverosh, when the king's anger subsided, Zachar is Vashti. He remembered Vashti. Remember last week, the Vilna Gaon made a big difference between Vashti Hamalka, Hamalka Vashti, whether she's Queen Vashti or Vashti the Queen, because it's teaching us certain ideas that we have to understand about her. But when it says just plain Vashti, he missed the woman. He missed Vashti. Most likely, knowing him was because of her looks. But whatever it was, he remembers what he did and what was decreed upon her. Pesach base, the Narei Hamelech come forward. The Narei Hamelech are the pages, the eunuchs, whatever you want to call them, the guys, the chambermen, bringing him his slippers and his morning New York Times and his cigar or whatever it was, his coffee, morning coffee, his night's cocktail, whatever it was. These people appeared. Now, why are we met? We'll see in a bit. So they go to the king and they say, Yivakshu Lamelech. In other words, they didn't tell the king what to do. This is written in a dictuk and grammatically written. It should be found for the king. Na'aros basulos tovos mara. There should be young maidens, virgins that are gorgeous, knocked out, drop dead gorgeous. Now, why did he want girls like this? Okay, why is it mentioned in the Megillah? Remember the whole first parak, they had a whole thing about background and royalty and how important it was and other things. Here, they're just going into the course bottom line, just get a good looking girl. That's all you need is a good looking girl. Why would they say that? And why? And we're going to see in Pasuk Gimel, what happens is he goes and does it. He goes sending messengers. They got every single young girl brought before him to the palace, to Hagah, who was in charge of the harem. Now, why did he listen to them? Where are all his counselors and advisors that we find is so particular in the first chapter? We find, 7 advisors. Where were they? The answer is, says the Vilna Gaon, that they were terrified to come before the king because when his wife died, they were afraid he's going to kill them next. And plus, especially the new law where the king is omnipotent, they didn't want to be seen before the king. They wanted to be left alone. So this is, it's incredible, unbelievable miracle. He listens to the pages, like all these small people. Like, what is it? So, okay, Pasuk Gimel also gave them all their cosmetics. Lancome was skyrocketing at the time, and all these other cosmetic companies, everybody's like running to buy. Vanara, Pasuk Daled, that's going to find favor in the eyes of the king, is going to be the next queen, and he did it. Unbelievable. Now, this narrative is interrupted by this line written in bold in most of our copies of Megillas Esther, and it also is something we're all supposed to repeat aloud. Ish Yehudi haya b'Shushan habira. There was a Jew in the city of Shushan. The name, we know that this is why this whole story is happening, and his name is Mordechai. Now, Yehudi, we would think he's from Yehuda. Some of the commentaries say his mother maybe was from Yehuda, but he's Ish Yemini at the end of the verse. He's from Binyamin. His tribal affiliation is Binyamin. So why is he called Ish Yehudi? So we're told that the whole idea of being a Yehudi means why we, in many places, we're called Yehudim. Why Yehudim, Haisa, Ira, V'Simcha. Why are we called Yehudim so many places in Tanakh and not Yisraelim? We're all children of Yaakov or Yisrael. We're Bnei Yisrael. Why are we called Yehudim sometimes? So the answer is given that the hallmark of every Jew is supposed to be grateful. First word we utter in the morning is Modeh. And our whole hallmark is supposed to be gratitude. We're not supposed to feel a sense of entitlement, so that's supposed to remind us what our mission is in life, is to be a grateful human being, to see the good in other people, to see what people do for us, to see what Hashem does for us. That's what we have to, and it's not natural. It's not natural. This is the hallmark of our forefathers, and we have it more than, there is something within us that has this potential, but it's something you have to work on. It doesn't come easily. Anyways, he was in Shushan, and his name was Mordechai. The name Mordechai, there was a spice in the Ketores, which was called more drawer. It was slightly bitter, and that was added. Sometimes, you add a little bit of a bitter spice. It really can be delicious, when you add it to, overly sweet. Everybody likes these sweet and sour concoctions, be it potato chips. Is that what it is? No, popcorn, sweet and sour popcorn, that pop insanity, right? Or these other things that people, sweet and sour is a very popular thing. So you need the sour or you need the bitter sometimes. It can sometimes bring out, the sweet. Also, the Targum renders that spice more drawer. What they call it in Aramaic is mar dachya, which is like Mordechai. So that spice is mar dachya, and that's why he was called Mordechai. Now, what's the point of that? Well, we have to know that. The idea is it means that this was a man that was like that his main feature was being like the Ketores. He knew how to appease Hashem because Ketores is an idea of a daily sacrifice that was given, and it was given as an appeasement and a pleasant smell when the smoke would come out of the Ketores was what do you call it? Incense. The incense, when it's burnt, its scent, is appeasing to Hashem, so to speak. Not that Hashem, has a sense of smell and taste. Maybe he does. I don't think so, but he's beyond it. But the point is that for us, the idea of smell, that what smell is a purely spiritual thing, and this was, one of his features. Ben Shimi. Now, some people say that these ancestors that were mentioned in his trait, Ben Yair, Ben Shimi, Ben Kish, all these ancestors were not just, maybe they were real in name, but they also, the Medrash says they refer to traits that he had. Yair, it says, Sheheir es ha'olam, well, he iris ha'olam b'tfilaso, that he, let me find where I wrote it, Sheir es, oh no, Einehem b'tfilaso. That's what I think I wrote. Can't read my writing. Anyways, he enlightened the world with his tefillah. He lit up the world with his prayer. Shimi, Hashem heard his prayer. And then it says Ben Kish. Kish means to knock, that Hashem listen, that he can actually, now if you notice, we're incorporating the senses except for taste. We're doing the sight, the hearing, the smell is Mordechai, and Lakish is the sense of touch. So that this is what Mordechai like rose the world up in prayer. We're told, says the Vilna Gaon, that he was not the biggest tzaddik of his generation. He was the fifth largest tzaddik. And why was he the focus of Megillas Esther? Everybody always thinks he's the biggest tzaddik. He wasn't. He was the greatest in tefillah. And that's why he was chosen to be the person to be the hero of this particular story. Now we know he's the one that told the Jews he doesn't think they should go to the suit of Achashverosh, and they did. 18,500 people did go for political reasons to please the king, and he told them no. He was not affected by what people say. He wanted to do what was right before Hashem. For various reasons, he didn't feel it was right. He felt, I think there was a sneeze problem there, big, major. I think that was one reason, that they thought they were bringing in women, and other things. It could be that he felt that, it depends which commentary you go by, but that he felt that they should not go to this Suda. Now, it says next pasuk vav, asher hagla Yerushalayim. He was exiled from Yerushalayim with Yechaniah. Yechaniah was that first exile we talked about last week, the first wave of immigrants from Israel. He went there and we read this pasuk usually in the tune of Echa, and the word Golah is mentioned 3 times. The reason why it's mentioned 3 times, we're told, is that he tried 3 times to go back to Eretz Yisrael. He was not successful. The reason why was because that people say he had to keep coming back to help Esther, who was an infant and did not have parents. So that's why he kept coming back. But he was going against his will. He really wanted to go back to Eretz Yisrael. Pasuk Zion, Vahi Omein is Hadassah. He adopted Hadassah. She's called Hadassah because Hadassim have a beautiful smell. Smell is a spiritual sense that we have. And she was totally pure, even though she's also Esther, but she's also Hadassah. He Bas Dodo, she was his cousin. And Ki Ein La Av Va'em, because she does not have parents. The significance there. Now, why do we have to know Esther didn't have parents? Okay, we don't have to. If he adopted her, or like, why do we have to know if she didn't have parents? Why do we even have to know these details? What's the significance there? Okay, it's interesting the story. We know more background, but there's a lot of background Chazal hide from us. We have no idea. Why do we have to know this in the pasuk of the Megillah? And the answer is that some people say, I believe it was the Chida, but I'm not positive. Or it's no, not the Chida, sorry. Chida says something else. We're going to say in a minute. It's either the Or HaChaim, it's one Sephardi commentator. It's either the Or HaChaim HaKadosh or it's someone else that I can't recall right now. I've tried to look it up, I couldn't find it. But the idea is that the hardest mitzvah in the Torah is kibbud av v'em. Now, people ask me, a share I just gave yesterday, why is it the hardest mitzvah? Two reasons, I think. This is according to me. One is that it's very, very, we take people for granted. We take things for granted. You see somebody day in and day out, all you have to do is turn to be a teenager and you take your parents for granted. There's also an idea of kibbud av v'em that Rav Chaim Shmulevitz says that the honor that we're supposed to show our parents is supposed to be expressed in three ways: machshava, dibur, and maseh. Thought, deed, and action. Thought, speech, and actions, rather. Like, in other words, the thought one is the hardest one. You're supposed to imagine, says Rav Chaim Shmulevitz, brings down halachic sources, we're supposed to think of our parents excelling in one area that nobody in the world does. Like they really excel in a specific trait, minimally. And then the speech, how we speak to them and speak about them, and action, how we treat them, in our activities. The reason it's, people are only human, and it's interesting, and the way you treat a parent is, I heard Rebbetzin Kolodeski a few weeks ago. I went into her and she was saying that the way you treat a parent, she's telling girls from seminaries, the way you treat a parent is the way you're going to treat your spouse. She told them that. And that's because how much are you able to try to see the good in somebody and try to admire somebody, or how much do you feel entitled and it's all about you and you can't see the good in somebody else? That's really what it boils down to. There's another thing, which this is my suggested idea, and that is that there's a whole thing of wanting to be without any boundaries. As a child, Reuven Grozovsky says that most people, as soon as a baby can stand up, he wants out. He wants out of his crib. He wants out of the playpen. He wants out because people want freedom. They don't want anyone. And I hear a parent, there's a certain idea. Your parent has to tell you what to do sometimes. It doesn't matter what age, even today, despite all the love you're supposed to have. I was just reading the biography. I'm still in the middle of it. Rav Matisyahu. It's a very good biography, by the way. Rav Matisyahu Zatzal said that he felt that there are kids going off the derech, and he said something different. He of course talks about love, great love you're supposed to show children, and we have to know the number one thing is love. Number one thing is to show love. He says, like, somebody once asked him to rebuke somebody, and he said, I first have to make a deposit before I make a withdrawal. They have to know I love them, and only then can I rebuke them. But he also said that children have to know that there's consequences, there's reward and punishment. And when they don't know that, he says that's why kids rebel. Interesting, despite the fact he was so into loving, and he said love, of course, is more than fear for children. There's no question about it, but there has to be some fear, and that's what he tends to say. And kids don't, children, they start as children and then as adults, they don't want to be told what to do anymore. Now, as Rebbetzin Kanievsky last Shalom used to say, don't tell your children once they're married what to do at all. That's it. Your role is over. Your chinuch is over, unless it's something really major, major, major. You shouldn't be, putting yourself into them. They're adults. They can make their own decisions, and they're going to resent you. And you can't go overboard. And it's true. But on the other hand, it's hard for us people don't want to have an overseer. And there are some people more extreme in that than others. Some people don't think they're the greatest. They don't want anyone telling them anything. They don't want to ever hear it again because they're the greatest thing on 2 feet. But it takes a lot of humility to have kibbud av v'em, and especially they're only human beings. They're not, and it's someone you're seeing every day. So for these reasons, it's hard to have kibbud av v'em. But Esther Ein La Av Va'em was significant because we're up against Amalek here, who's Haman. Amalek was the grandson of Esav, and Esav personified Kibbud Av V'em. He would dress up whenever he saw his father. He had tremendous respect for his father. And we are supposed to copy in those ways. And, I remember Rabbi Friedler, Zichron Livracha in Toronto, told me once, I never knew this before he told me, he said, when your parents come to visit Toronto, have everyone dress up in Shabbos clothing. Like maybe it's an idea that's lost today. But people failed in this area. Esther did not have the test. Of course, posthumously, we still have an obligation, and there's still things we can be tested on. But you can't fail. The hardest part is when they're alive, not when they're not here, because then you don't take them for granted anymore because they're not here. So, anyways, so for this reason, Ein La'av V'em significance. She didn't have this test, so she could go up against Amalek. And Mordechai because of his tefillah, Esther because of her kibbud av v'em, or lack of test thereby. The Chidah says, this is what Rav Matisyahu used to bring down all the time. The Chidah says that every success you have in life is dependent on your degree of kibbud av v'em. He says, you want to be more successful? That's the first mitzvah to work on is kibbud av v'em. Now, so he adopted her. Omein is similar to the way of, it was to mean to adopt. That's similar to the word amen. It's similar to the word uman, which is a craftsman. All those things have in common is emuna does not come just by breathing. People say, have more emuna. You have to learn svarim on emuna. You have to self-talk because hamanti ki adaber. You have to work on emuna. So that's why you have to make it a craft, like an uman, a craftsman would have to perfect something. You practice over and over again and make a lot of failures until you finally get something right. Or like omein, to adopt it. Or amen, to say it's true. I'm going to make it true in my heart. And that's how emuna becomes real to us. So he adopted Hadassah. She was his cousin. And she's Yefas Tor v'Tovas Mareh. What does that mean? She's beautiful, and in general, that's what the Vilna Gaon says. She's beautiful. Generally, see her from afar, she looks beautiful. And Tovas Mareh means each particular feature. Like she didn't have a long nose, she didn't have acne, whatever it was. She didn't have all these. Every feature was perfect, according to the Vilna Gaon. Other people I know say she's got olive green complexion, all that stuff. It's a different story, but this is what the Vilna Gaon says. Now, this is also, says the Vilna Gaon, in her spiritual characteristics. Usually, the more spiritual, the more physical somebody is, more beautiful. I know I heard this from Rabbi Orlowick, Shlita from Torah Or in Yerushalayim. I heard this years ago, but it struck a chord with me. He says, in looking for a shidduch, the more beautiful the girl, usually the less character she has. It's hard. This is what our matriarchs excelled in. Most of them were very beautiful, like Rus and Esther and many of the other matriarchs. And usually, the more beautiful somebody is, the more it goes to their head. They think they're God's gift to humanity, and therefore they don't work on themselves. There could be any trait that we are good in, be it brawn or brains or whatever it may be. We tend to be so proud of ourselves, how great we are. And then we lack the character that we're supposed to have. It's usually the hardworking people that win in the end. That's how it goes. So we find that the so Esther was excelling. If you looked at her from afar, you saw tzaddikus. The lady is you're a shemayim and midas typus, but even particular midas, tovas mareh. She'd do any mitzvah. She put her whole heart into it. Each midah was perfect. This is what made Esther special more than anybody else. Now we're on to, and when her parents were nifter, lakacha Mordechai lo levas. He took her as a daughter. Some people say took her as a daughter, and others say when she became of age, he married her. Because it don't say bas, but say bias. She was the house, and the woman makes the tone in the house, not the man. The woman sets the whole tone in the whole house of midas, yiras shamayim, everything. We have a big role to play as Jewish women. So then when so what happened is The next pasuk ches, and it was when everybody heard the king's edict that they had to go gather all the Jewish women, and they gathered a lot of young girls to Shushan through Hagah, and Vatila kach Esther. Esther was taken against her will to the king's palace through Hagah. Now, what happened? That we're told that like she was hiding out. She was like a fugitive during this period of time when all the women were being gathered. Esther shuttered all the windows. She didn't want anyone to see she was there, and she didn't refuse to go. Of all places, to take us like this should go to this lowly situation, the harem over there. She refused. One day there was some kind of tumult, and she just opened the shutters a crack to be able to see, and somebody noticed female looking eyes peering outside the door, and that was it. They called the police and she was taken. That's what happened to Esther Hamalka. So she was taken to Hagah, and of all things, Pasuk Tes, she found favor in his eyes. She thought that this is it. He thought this was the woman. So he put a lot more energy into her. He gave her 5 maidservants, and he started to, he started getting all the cosmetics going for her. Now, it's incredible. Like he did it because all these women were saying, wow, we can take any cosmetic known to man. Finally, Botox for free. Like the best world possible. And then facelifts and who knows what else was going on at that time. I mean, at least in ancient times, whatever the correspondent was. So they did all those things. And meanwhile, Esther doesn't want anything. So, Lohigida Esther. Es Amaves Moladata Kiborchet Sivala Shalo Sagid. She never revealed who she was from. Now she has yichas. She really was a perfect next candidate after Vashti. She descended from Shaul HaMelech, King Saul. King Saul also didn't reveal. King Saul had the trait when he was anointed by Shmuel HaNavi of he was the Shmuel Hanavi thing anointed him as king, and he was not yet supposed to be king, but he was supposed to be soon. His whole family did not know. Shaul didn't come home that day telling his parents, "Guess what happened to me today? I was anointed as king." No, he did not say a word. Did not utter a word. Can you imagine? Okay, he didn't say anything because he was humble. So Esther had that trait of humility from her great 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 grandfather, whoever he was. And also, here, Mordecai told her not to reveal. Sometimes it's dangerous if a Jew it gets to a high position in power. If things go wrong, they may blame all the Jews. That's why, for the most part, we of course have Orthodox congressmen sometimes or representatives, but not very high positions because this could be a problem for the Jews. That's why usually we don't take these kind of positions. Pasuk Yud Aleph. Every day Mordechai is walking back and forth in front of the harem to know Shlom Esther Umaya Seba. He wants to know 2 things. Number one, how Esther's faring spiritually. Because it says Tovas Rishayim Ra Eitzel Tzadikim. When tzaddikim are benefited by the wicked, it's usually not a good ending. The reason being is that when they benefit us, often a tzaddik is afraid it's going to go to my head. They're afraid we're gonna get too full of materialism and we'll go too much into that world and forget what we're here in the world for. I remember reading about Rav Meshulam David Soloveitchik Zatzal. Rav David, they called him, who was a big in the Brisker dynasty he just passed away a few years ago. Rav Meshulam David didn't anything in his house beside the light bulbs were over 50 years old. He didn't want to get influenced by this world. He didn't want to have a connection with this world in any way. And especially we're talking about Mordechai. I mean, I drank too much today, I guess. So I already confused Mordechai with Haman, or Achashverosh. Achashverosh was influencing with all the opulence and the cosmetics and the everything that there was available at that time. So she didn't want to be influenced. So he was very worried about her spiritually. Mordecai. He was very worried that Esther should have problems, should be heartbroken that she's in this setting. And also Maya Seba. He's also worried what physically could be done. Is someone trying to harm her? Like here Achashverosh killed his first wife. Hopefully, she should be okay now, with the king and all the other things that are connected to it. Imagine Mordecai spending time now, a tzaddik, going to like Sunset Strip or these at Times Square, and he's just doing it in order to be protective of Esther because, first of all, he realizes that this is a Jewish thing now. Why she called to the palace is very unusual, and also for her welfare to help another yid. You're supposed to go on a limb sometimes. That's what you have to do. Anyways, Pasuk Yud Base, every girl would take turns going to the king. Uh, 6 months in oil. Should we try that? Maybe that'll help. Who knows? And 6 months in all kinds of perfumes and I don't know, besamim. I don't know what spices. I don't know what you did. I would like to know. Maybe it helped. Maybe they have to discover these things. And then she came to the king, and whatever the king whatever needed to come to the king, she would do it. I mean, they would do it for her. But she didn't want anything. She just not, when they called her, she did not ask anything. Only what Haggai did, and she was no seis chen be'ene kol ro'eha. She found favor in the eyes of everybody that saw her. Now, what does this mean? This is an interesting trait. That's not easy, especially, to find favor in the eyes of everybody that saw her. That's very hard. I saw once, Perish, Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky Zatzal says that Mashiach is going to have the same trait. He's going to find favor in the eyes of everybody that sees him. Now, for a Jew, that's a very big trick. That's a very big thing to do. Every single sect that we have, every group, I don't want to leave anyone out, but let's say Sephardi, Ashkenazi, Hasidish, all kinds of Chabad, all kinds of groups of Jews that we have today, they each possess a specific trait that they excel in. And people usually tend to bond with people of their ilk. It's just how it usually happens. God made this thing where he wants a man and a woman to get married because we tend to differ slightly too in the way we approach life. And he wants that to perfect ourselves. But other than that, we usually are drawn to people more similar to ourselves because we have self-love. We like, and we, whatever reason, we believe in what we're doing and we believe in the derech we have, and then we tend to go better with people that have the same stress in their life, the same stress meaning stress of purpose, not stress of whatever, going crazy, overwhelmed. We want people that have the same, maybe that too, I don't know, but we want to have people that stress the same ideas in their life. So Rav Yaakov said like this, what does it mean that she found favor in everyone's eyes, and also, whatever? It means that when that Mashiach is going to have so many wonderful traits that everyone's going to say he must be one of ours. Let's say Chabad, who stresses, loving every Jew, and they stress Kiruv. They're going to see Mashiach. Wow, he's got Kiruv in him. He loves every Jew. He must be Chabad. The Sephardim are going to say, the warmth, the food, the parties, the giving, the brachas. They're going to see Mashiach has all that. They're going to say he's Sephardi. For sure he's Sephardi. I had an experience recently. I had to go in a cab recently somewhere, and I had a secular Israeli cab driver. I was going to a chassan actually. And in the cab, I just, whatever, I forgot what he asked me. He asked me a few questions. I answered his questions. He says, are you Sephardi? I said, no, I'm not Sephardi. I said, maybe way back when I have to do something that there is probably some Sephardi in way back, way back in my, on one side. Anyways, he said, you're of course Sephardi. Only a Sephardi would talk like that. It proves my point that this is what but Esther, everyone would say she must be our from our country because she has that trait that we all appreciate. Same thing with Mashiach. I don't know what he's going to be. We all don't know what he's going to be, but he's going to have all the traits of all the nationalities, the good traits, to be such a perfection in his traits that everyone's going to think he's one of ours. And that's what Esther Doses Chain. It's not because she knew how to smear people, but because she was such a pure soul that everybody saw what they excelled in her. Now, where am I? Okay, Pasuk Tezain. She was taken to the king in the 10th month as Teves, the 7th year of his reign. So Vashti died on the 3rd year. That's when the party took place. And 4 years later, she became queen. Okay, so now he loved her from all the others, and he found favor in his eyes. He put the crown on her head, and he made her queen instead of Vashti. So he made a big party. Now, what did he do? The party, the Vilna Gaon says the reason he made the party was that he wanted her to reveal her background to him. So he was hoping by making this elaborate party, maybe she's going to try to, maybe she'll even drink something. Maybe she likes cherry herring or slivovitz. Am I dating myself? I don't even know if they drink that anymore. But those were those are drinks I remember as a child that, my parents' generation drinking. Any case, he was thinking maybe she'll like some of this thing. Maybe she'll be a little bit, her tongue will loosen up a little bit and she'll say her background, but she still didn't say anything. I heard a Parish years ago that what was incredible about Megillas Esther is that no one else revealed it either. No one throughout the whole Megillah, and it's 12-year period. Okay, but from now, year four, it ends in year 12. 7 whole years, not one Jew revealed Esther's background. Unbelievable. Not one Jew snitched on her or said anything about her to reveal her background, and we're saved from Shmiras Halashon. Because keeping a secret is part of Shmiras Halashon. To tell on somebody's secrets is really something you're revealing something they don't want said about themselves. So, anyways, he makes his party and he reduces the taxes. Now, Pasuk Yates was always something I didn't understand until I started teaching this years ago, and that is he had another party just for virgins. Now, why did he do this? He did it, and it says, and Mordechai sitting in the Shar HaMelech. Why did they do this? They had another party just of single women to see if he can get Esther through jealousy to reveal. Like all these women, maybe he's going to take them instead of her. She still didn't reveal. Mordechai sitting in the Shar HaMelech, like right there in the royal area. There's a royal area, just like apparently the Vatican has like a place like that, where it's just like the area of that they consider, and they do this in all royal palaces. Apparently, we don't know from this so much in North America, but there's a royal area where you're in the confines of the whole compound, where near the palace. So he's sitting right near the palace the whole time because he wants to keep tabs on Esther. He feels this is not by coincidence that this is going on. He may be needed to issue a ruling or to still look after Esther and for the sake of the Jewish people, maybe can help. This is a national Jewish issue now, and he has to deal with it. Pasuk Chav Aleph, the parak is ending now with Bigsan Viserys, these two people plotting to kill the king. And Mordechai, being of the Sanhedrin, knows 70 languages. He understands their language. He tells Esther what he knows, and Esther tells it to the king in the name of Mordechai. They hang them on the tree, and they write it down in the king's chronicles. Now it says in Pirkei Avos, Perek Gimel, Kala Omer Davar B'Shem Amro, whoever quotes something in the name of he that he heard it from, brings Geula to the world, brings redemption to the world, because Esther told the king in the name of Mordechai. How is it? Why do we understand that? Why is it so? There's a lot of other things Esther did. She was a tzedekah, they davened, all kinds of things. How do we learn that everything that's, whoever quotes people in the right name is bringing redemption to the world? How do we understand this? So Rav Yaakov Galinsky Zatzal tells us that the thing, when you quote the person you've heard something from, first of all, that shows humility, which is what a Jew is supposed to display, hopefully, because you're supposed to believe it's God, not me. When you're showing humility, then you are able to be ready for Mashiach. We're told by Rav Dessler that there are two types of scenarios where Mashiach can come. One is called a dor shekulo chayav, a generation that's all guilty, or dor shekulo zakai, a generation that's all meritorious. Now, what about us middle guys, the Beinonim? What, only when people are all righteous or are they all wicked, Mashiach will come? How do we understand that? What do we learn from that? So Rav Dessler says the one common denominator between those types of scenarios is in both episodes, people are saying it wasn't me. The righteous will say, Hashem, you do so much for us. We don't deserve anything you're doing for us. And when Mashiach will come, they'll be the first to say, Hashem, it's you. It's not Donald Trump. It's not any world leaders. It's you, Hashem, you and you alone, and it's for sure not me. A wicked person will also say, when he sees Mashiach, he'll say, I didn't deserve this. I sinned. Now, the average person, though, will say, well, I did a mitzvah today. I davened like a few lines with Kavana and Shemona Esrei. I said Shema, the first paragraph with Kavana. I did this, I did that. They may be apt to attribute it to their own great, prowess. But really, the more we're able to attribute it to Hashem, the more we'll bring Geula. And that begins with people doing things such as quoting. If you're saying something, don't say it's yours. I remember this happened to me years ago. I'll never forget. It hurt me a little bit, but okay, people get older, they don't know. Somebody was writing a book, and they asked me to check a lot of sources for them. And I checked sources for them. And at the end, they wrote in the preface to the book, they thanked me for being one of their students, which I never was, by the way. Never was one of their students. I checked for them the sources for the book, and they just attributed that I was one of their students, which is interesting. But in any case, people, by nature, we don't tend to think, we want to think that we're free of other people and we've done all these things on our own. And how much of us is really a compound of the parents that put so much into us? How much of our personality is based on what our parents did for us and our schooling and our friends and our environment and things like that? How much we owe to others. The more we're able to do that, the more we can bring Geula to the world. Let us now enter the third parak, where we have some really interesting things coming up here. Okay, the third parak, the third chapter of the Megillah is all about Haman, the rise of the evil Haman. So it says, after these things, it means after they were hung, the Bigsan Viseresh, and after Esther becomes queen, then it's the rise of Haman. And we're told there's a pasuk in Mishlei Lifnei Shever Gaon. Before somebody's going to fall, they get puffed up. Because you know what? The higher you rise, the deeper the fall, the lower the fall. And it's not just, geographically that you go higher on a mountain, you fall deeper. But let's say somebody is risen to world famous stature. Let's say you're a famous, whatever it is, politician, whatever. The more famous you are, the more everybody knows everything about you, and the stupider you look at the end. Whereas if you're just a regular Joe, your falling is not as intense as it is when the whole world knows about it, right? Or if you fall from a high place and then you're lowered to, let's say, poverty or whatever, it hurts much, much more than if you're lowered from a medium place, right? So for this reason, Haman first has to rise up, very fall. It's in Ovadia. Ovadia is one parak. And in Ovadia, we're told that if you go up to the highest places, I'm going to lower you from that, says Hashem to Edom. So Haman ben Amadassah is risen up. It says Gidal Hamelech. The Vilna Gaon says Gidal means that he was given a lot of money. He was really a rich man by Yenasehu, and he raised him up. He gave him a lot of honor. Though he was second to the king, prime minister. So those are the two things bestowed upon Haman, and his chair was risen upon all the other officers. Pasuk base. Now all the servants that were in the Shar Hamelech, if you were in the royal area, you were obligated to prostrate yourself in front of Haman. If he came by you and you were in the royal area, now if you're downtown Toronto, you don't have to, but if Haman appeared in the royal area, there was a specific mandate that you had to prostrate yourself to Haman, and Mordechai lo yichrav lo yishtachava. Mordechai refused to do so. Why? Because either he was wearing some kind of idol on his neck, Mordechai didn't, or because he was a Malek. He didn't want to bow down to Haman. And then Pasuk Gimel, the Avdei Hamelech asked Mordechai, why aren't you keeping the mitzvah of the king? They told this to Mordechai. Now, when they're talking, and they kept telling him this every day, and he didn't listen, and they told Haman, Pasuk Daled, to see what's going to happen. Why did they tell Haman? Well, they hated Haman. They really hated him intensely, all the servants. You'd be schlepping a bunch of donuts to the latest party of the king, and all of a sudden you had to put down your donuts and prostrate yourself. It was very annoying. So they wanted to see maybe if they get an antagonist here, maybe something will develop, and especially they knew the Jews were the holy nation. Maybe something's going to happen against Haman. They wanted to see what's going to transpire right now. Pasuk, hey, Haman sees that Mordecai is not bowing to him and he's boiling angry. How did he? Well, all of a sudden, first it says that the Nare Hamelech, the small people, again, they noticed they're making a difference in the whole Megillah. As we said before, they got Esther in the picture. Now they're telling Haman, don't you see Mordecai doesn't bow down to you? So says the Vilna Gaon, Haman had such an ego, such a narcissist, that he didn't even bother to look whether somebody is bowing down to him or not. He did. The people were like flies to him. People were just objects because he's the grandiose everything. So as soon as the servants told him, he opened his eyes and he notices this one guy never flinching, never bowing down to him. Until then, he didn't notice at all. People were nothing to him. Now, Pasuk Vav, he decided, Vayivas be'inav, it was too lowly for him to just kill Mordecai. Come on, it's going to look like I'm petty. I'm not petty. I'm a great person. I have to kill his whole nation. So he decides to destroy every single Jew in all of the king's kingdom. And, and so it's on the first month, on Nisan, in the 12th year already. He threw lots because Haman does not believe in God. He believes in coincidence. He feels, you get lucky. So he's throwing lots. He's trying to do, because that's the same thing with Amalek. We talks about Asher Karcha Baderech. They met you up in the way to meet you coincidentally. Everything's coincidence by Amalek. Nothing means anything, right? Now, so he decided that that he's going to he throws lots in his sides. He finds the month of Adar looks very auspicious. It falls on Adar, and he said, "Oh, Moses died that month." Well, Moses was also born that month. It's a very auspicious time. By the way, if you die on your birthday, it's a big thing. Rav Moshe Feinstein was the closest in our generation that he died on the day of his bris on Purim. I remember the whole thing that we weren't allowed to use grogers that year because of the holy Rav Moshe, the leader of the generation, was Nifter. Any case, he decides, he proposes a plan, and he tells the king, this is how he's going to approach the whole thing. Yeshno am echad. There is a nation, and the Gemara tells us Yeshno means that they're sleeping, that their God is sleeping. It's that he's not, the temple was supposed to be built. It's not, because he only calculated from the first wave of immigrants. And they're mefuzar, they're spread out, they're all over the place, they're not all together. Forward, they're like a preda. Preda is like an animal that doesn't have offspring, a mule. They're separated between all the other nations. They're very, very different. And he also mentions in Dasam Shanos, their customs are different from any other customs. And this is really the killing argument is right here. And for the king, it's not worth it financially to keep them. Like if you take them as slaves, let's say, because they're such a lowly people, it's not even worth it for you because you're not going to get much out of them. They're different. They don't keep the king's customs, means they don't they say we can't work, even though you need us today, we can't. It's our holiday. We don't do anything the way you do. And in fact, they say that another explanation of the Ein Shoveh Hanicham is that if a fly falls into the drink, Your Majesty, they'll spill out some of the wine with the fly. Today, probably we wouldn't drink wine that way, but this is what they say. But if a Jew touches your wine, they won't drink it at all. You touch a Jew's cup of wine, they won't drink it at all. Or if you touch the bottle, they won't drink it at all. So you are worse than the common housefly to the Jew. That's how much they don't regard you, and it's unbelievable. And then he also offers 10,000 talents of silver, which is also, the king was still, even though he had money, it's ohev kesev lo yispa kesev. We're told if a person loves money, there's never enough. Yesh lo mana ratzah masayim. You have something, you want double. We're never happy with the amount, especially if your stress is in the physical world, then whatever you have is never going to be enough for you. So he throws it in Adar, and he says if the king wants, he could write them off. And I will throw into the batch, I will throw in my 10,000 talents of silver. The king takes off his ring, and they say there was no one that ever spoke Lashon Hara as much as Haman. Everything he said was true about the Jews, but lashon hara means is the way you spin it. You spin it negative. If you see people as negative, two people can witness the same event, but if you judge them favorably and you don't witness them as negative, then you're a person that's more apt not to speak lashon hara. But if you tend to view people in the negative, why did she do this? And if you're judgmental, you have these things that you keep perceiving things always in the negative way. You're more apt to speak lashon hara. Okay, I think we didn't finish the parak, but I don't want to keep you any longer. We will resume next week. Next week we are going to be on Monday instead of Tuesday because I'm not able to give this share on Tuesday next week. So it's same time, same wonderful Rivka Shabsov and Debbie Menzelewski, and same wonderful Megillas Esther by the Vilna Gaon. But we're doing this on Monday. I thank you for listening. I'm turning off the recording right now. And then you can ask all your questions and comments or whatever else you want to talk about. So here we go. We're turning it off.